Imagine standing before Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa gazing up at Michelangelo's radiant Sistine Chapel ceiling, or reading Copernicus's world-altering words about the universe. This isn't just history, it's a revolution of thought. The Renaissance was a time when arts, science, and philosophy exploded, illuminating Europe after centuries of darkness. It laid the foundation for European dominance across the globe for centuries to come. But why? If you could hop into a time machine, Renaissance Europe might seem like a terrible destination. You'd witness not only the brutality of endless wars, but also the oppressive grip of the Catholic Church's social control. In 476, the fall of the mighty Roman Empire to Germanic tribes plunged Europe into chaos and darkness. The Middle Ages, from a unified empire, Europe fractured into fragmented regions. The Visigoths took Spain, the Lombards claimed Italy, the Franks ruled Gaul, and the Angles and Saxons settled England. These tribes didn't coexist peacefully, they clashed constantly. Then came the Black Death, a devastating blow that wiped out over half of Europe's population, making an already dire situation nearly hopeless. In that darkness, the Catholic Church rose as a dominant force, controlling politics, economics, and spirituality. Its power stifled intellectual progress, branding thinkers like Galileo and Copernicus as heretics and punishing them harshly. Every sign of progress in Europe seemed frozen, yet, in that same darkness, the seeds of progress quietly sprouted, ushering in a new era, the Renaissance, when the light of knowledge and art spread across Europe once more. The Renaissance began in 14th century Italy, the heart of the former Roman Empire, and gradually swept across the continent, becoming a full-scale revolution. It wasn't just a revival of classical Greek and Roman values. It marked a turning point in how people thought about themselves and the world. If a time machine dropped you into the chaotic, vengeful Middle Ages, the Renaissance would be your salvation, a time when individual growth, humanistic values, and intellect took center stage. Thinkers championed humanity as the center of the universe, celebrating the freedom to create and explore the world through reason and science. This intellectual awakening laid the groundwork for major innovations in philosophy, politics, and art. Figures like Erasmus, Thomas More, and Niccolò Machiavelli left lasting marks. With the Prince Machiavelli offered a bold new perspective on power and leadership, challenging traditional thinking. The Renaissance wasn't just about ideas, it was a time of world-changing explorations. Christopher Columbus discovered the Americas, Vasco da Gama pioneered a sea route to India, and Ferdinand Magellan circumnavigated the globe. These journeys didn't just expand geographic boundaries. They connected Europe to new civilizations, resources, and ideas in science. The Renaissance was a launchpad for revolutionary discoveries. Copernicus's heliocentric theory defied millennial-old geocentric beliefs, paving the way for the scientific revolution. Leonardo da Vinci, beyond his iconic artworks, was a visionary inventor whose sketches of machines and weapons inspired modern technologies. This era also saw an explosion of art and literature, with timeless works that enriched culture and shaped the era's thought. The Renaissance wasn't merely a rebirth of ancient values, it was a springboard for the modern development of art, science, and philosophy. This intellectual enlightenment propelled Europe into a new phase, setting the stage for the Industrial Revolution, where medieval Europe was bound by rigid religious and conservative constraints. The Renaissance was a breath of fresh air, unleashing imagination and sparking creative thought. Renaissance giants, artists like Leonardo and Michelangelo, scientists and philosophers like Galileo and Francis Bacon refused to accept known limits. That spirit became a guiding flame for later inventors like James Watt, who perfected the steam engine, and Richard Arkwright, the father of the modern factory system. Renaissance scientists like Copernicus, Galileo, and Johannes Kepler reshaped humanity's understanding of the cosmos and set new standards for scientific inquiry. Their pioneering scientific method became a powerful tool, later applied widely in engineering and technology. Isaac Newton's principles of mechanics, deeply influenced by the Renaissance, became the foundation for designing and operating complex machinery, fueling the Industrial Revolution's rapid advancements. New trade routes from geographic discoveries brought prosperity to Europe and created a growing demand for large-scale goods production. This drove technological and organizational improvements, laying the groundwork for factories and modern industrial systems. The scientific and technological progress of this radiant era ushered in an age of European global expansion. The Renaissance sparked a boom in science and commerce, giving rise to a new wealthy class, the modern bourgeoisie. Their rapid growth created an insatiable demand for resources that Europe's small landmass couldn't sustain. This pushed major powers to seek gold, silver, spices, and slaves from new lands, marking the start of the colonial era. Superior maritime technologies, compasses, detailed maps, and versatile ships enabled Europeans to cross oceans and explore distant continents. Explorers like Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Magellan not only discovered new territories and launched global trade, but also set the stage for centuries of European colonial conquest. The exploitation of colonial resources enriched Europe, but at a brutal cost to indigenous peoples in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, who faced ruthless exploitation, loss of sovereignty, and cultural erasure. Meanwhile, in Europe, the rising capitalist class reshaped society, shifting from feudalism to a market-driven, industrial economy. They led the charge in building a new society rooted in innovation and economic growth. Yet, few could imagine that a brilliant era like the Renaissance, which revived literature, science, and art, also sowed seeds of division in Europe. The idea of the nation-state began to emerge in the 15th century as countries broke free from the Catholic Church's tight control and reduced the clergy's role in secular governance. Nations were built on unique identities, laying the foundation for modern ethnicities. For example, in Germany, scholar Felix Kesting notes that from 1813, King Friedrich Wilhelm III emphasized national spirit in his policies, fostering loyalty and inspiring unity in newly annexed territories. Such policies shaped German identity at the community and family levels. However, Germany's pride in its rich culture and history was overshadowed by powers like Britain and France, whose vast colonial networks made them global empires. Germany struggled to find its place on the world stage, escalating tensions over colonies that eventually erupted into World War I. Extreme nationalism, particularly Germany's intense focus on its identity, fueled World War II, bringing even greater devastation. Yet, the war's military advancements laid the groundwork for later technological revolutions, with breakthroughs in physics, chemistry, and mechanics driving modern weaponry and innovations. The Renaissance marked Europe's powerful rise, but no golden age lasts forever. The law of rise and fall is an undeniable truth in human history, and Europe is no exception. After dominating the world for centuries, modern Europe began showing weaknesses and decline following the devastation of two world wars. By the mid-20th century, it ceded its dominant position to the United States. For decades, European values were seen as global standards, but now they face challenges from other regions. China, with its ambitious vision, is reasserting its historical prominence, while Russia and China push BRICS to reshape the global order, arguing that Western-dominated values are unfair. Even smaller nations are carving out their own principles. ASEAN, representing smaller and mid-sized countries, works to establish its own standards, balancing independence with cooperation amid U.S. China rivalry. ASEAN's principles ensure stability and a leadership role in its region. Most of these nations, except Russia, were once under European colonial rule, but have since risen economically and socially. Meanwhile, Europe, once the world's power center, shows signs of crisis, economic stagnation, political instability, and social unrest. The EU's lack of unity hinders its ability to face growing challenges. The 2010s debt crisis shook the financial foundations of countries like Greece and Italy, and while the EU strives to recover, its pace lags behind the US and China. Europe's economy struggles against cheap Chinese goods, pressuring local industries. Aging populations and labor shortages add to socio-economic strain, once a promised land for immigrants. Europe now grapples with racism and terrorism. Migration from the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia has diversified populations, but sparked cultural and social tensions. Xenophobia and anti-immigrant movements have fractured the unity that once defined Europe's strength. Most alarmingly, war's shadow returned in 2022 with the Ukraine conflict. Rippling across the region, and despite efforts to contain it, the situation remains volatile. These factors plunge Europe into a deep political crisis, evident in the collapse of several leading governments. The biggest question for Europe today is whether it can adapt and redefine its role in the modern world. History shows no empire stays at its peak forever, but decline isn't the end. Europe remains a vital center of culture, knowledge, and politics if it can navigate its current crises. It may maintain its influence, though perhaps not as the sole global leader.